Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty RoundTable Radio Talk Show.
All right. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman live on your radio. Hard-hitting news the networks refuse to use, no doubt, starts now. This, my fellow Americans, is the broadcast for August 25th in the year of our Lord 2025. This is hour two, one of two. The goal always to protect life, liberty, and property, to promote God, family, and country, to do so in the traditions of our founding fathers. Ladies and gentlemen, we the people can restore the republic. We've got to use the checks and balances brilliantly put in place by the founding fathers. We've got to become a moral people again. We can find our way back, folks. As Dr. Scott Bradley wisely says, the trail is absolutely clear and abundant of where we've come from and what we need to return to preserve this nation. Speaking of preserve this nation, Dr. Scott Bradley's with me. He's author of a collegiate DVD lecture series, a book, helping people in homeschool understand how to preserve this nation in the traditions of the founding fathers. Check out his freedomsrisingsun.com website. You can learn about that collegiate series to preserve the nation. You can also sign up for his weekly webinars, Q&As on the Constitution, and more. And then you can go to BitChute and Rumble and other places and look for Freedom's Call. And you can check that out. Dr. Bradley, welcome back, sir. Hope you had a delightful weekend.
Well, yeah, it just seems to me like the weekends come and go. I mean, they're about every 3 days apart now. I mean, I just almost feel like the timeline is accelerating. And so I don't know if the clock has been changed, the rotation of the earth, and what we're doing around the sun. I don't know, but man alive, I am just absolutely blown away at how fast life is going by.
Well, I hate to tell you, I'm afraid it's going to get faster, too. It seems like, to me, it just seems like there's just no end to the speed up of things. It just seems like, man, everything is just getting crazier. And one of the things I think we need to do as life gets crazier, as everything just seems to get overwhelming and busier, I think we personally need to go in the opposite direction and scale back. I'm not saying be lazy and lay around and you know, be the devil's workshop by just, you know, accomplishing nothing or sitting around or being, you know. But at the same time, when there's 1,000 things to do, it's fine for me to settle on 50, not 1,000. And that's kind of the point, is I do think we need to kind of prioritize our time. We've only got 24 hours in the day. We don't want to be slothful servants. We don't want to be idle in the devil's workshop, of course. But at the same time, hey, they want us to be so busy we can't focus on anything. And we got to basically guard against that and realize that's the devil's tool, too. On one hand, he wants you to just be lethargic and do nothing and idle. On the other hand, he wants to try to overwhelm you. It's the kind of the communist tactic we've seen from Zelensky and others. Hey, they want you to feel so overwhelmed that you just can't get a grasp on everything, so you give up somewhere in the middle. But let's start and say R.I.P., dear brother. Who are we talking about? Dr. James Dobson, conservative Christian leader, Focus on the Family founder, dies at 89 years old last week. Patrick Houck with the piece that brought this to my attention, so he deserves some credit. But James Dobson passed away, Doctor.
Indeed, it is true. I mean, you know, we're all kind of on the same program, you know. I mean,
you mean we're headed towards that too? Yes, sir.
Yeah. I mean,
that's
it's
right.
like, and so our days are numbered, and although they're known to the Lord, I believe. And it behooves us to, this dovetails really good into what you were just talking about, the fact that time well spent and so on. You know, there's plenty of distractions in the world today, and there are so many, things that kind of can take you off the rails, if you will. And if in fact you can spend your time in a worthy cause that uplifts and blesses the lives of others, and your fellow man can be better off because of something you've done, you'll lift up the hands that hang down. You know, I'm reminded, and this is kind of, I don't know, today's world, I guess, all too often with the lewdness and the crudeness and everything else like that's out there, that's, you know, really a diversion from everything else. And if you think in 2 Timothy 3, for of this sort are they which creep into houses and lead captive silly women, laden with sins, led away with diverse lusts, ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. There's so much in that. This idea that, you can go out and spend your eternity almost in an internet search for drivel. You can pursue degrees in college or wherever that have absolutely zero value to anything. I mean, I read about some of these college degrees that there is no way in the world are the people that obtain those degrees ever going to be able to make a living with them. And it's like, yeah.
Well, not only are they going to not be able to make a living with them, but oftentimes they're just so full of gobbledygook that's flat out false, untrue, fake news, whatever word you want to use for it, but it's blatantly 180 degrees from the truth according to God's law and according to civilization, historical reality, right?
Well, let's just compare and contrast. I like to teach with that methodology. You compare to this and that, and then you look and see, well, what's the differences and why, and what has a greater value. I mean, that's why, in my book, I've got a chapter on the Communist Manifesto. I'm not fostering the Communist Manifesto. I'm helping people understand, I hope to help people understand, the complete divergence from the Americanist philosophy that Marx took. So yeah, there's stuff like that. You can get in and say, wow, it's nice to know that's out there, but you have to get a whole degree in it. I mean, and you think about gobbledygook. Well, let's look at the back during the Renaissance, they developed the microscope, and not nearly as clearly advanced as ours are now, and the telescopes and so on, but they saw through devices things that the human eye had never observed before, and they were utterly amazed at the whole thing. And one thing they saw was order. They saw in that the hand of a creator, because it was like a fine watch, if you will, that worked. A watch just doesn't come together on its own. And today our theory is a Big Bang theory. Everything blew up and we came out of it. We're just a big mistake that happened in the eternal scheme of things. And
I have an interesting thought about that. A lot of people just want to believe, there's no such thing as the Big Bang and this and that, and they want to basically create this, science versus God, parting, or one can be but the other can't be. And I kind of think, God's in charge. There's no debate about that, in my personal opinion. However, I do think there might have been an explosion of some kind that helped carry out his efforts. Now, it wasn't just a random explosion like they're saying by any stretch, but there could have been some kind of a thing that looks to us in man-made just as if it's an explosion, and that might have been part of the way things happen. The after effects, we see the limited scope, but rather kind of like, we can use explosions very productively for the right reasons, and we can control a lot of it. But that's just us as man-made folks. We're children in this discussion. But my whole point is there could be an explosion that did take part under God's hand, and so they're partially right. They just don't have the context and the reality and point to the real source of all things. And that's the problem, right?
That could very well be. And a lot of times when kids are kind of, in fact, we could spend the whole rest of the whole get-together on this, but there's a book that I often steer young people to, anybody that wants to, to think about this. It's a book by James Perloff. It came out probably 20-something years ago. I've got a copy here if you want me to read quotes. They're fascinating in it. But at any rate, I'd have to get it off the shelf during the next break. But at any rate, James Perloff titled it "Tornado in a Junkyard." And the whole, the basis of the title is, here comes this tornado whooping through a junkyard. I mean, just stirring things all to pieces. And out of the other end of the junkyard, with the tornado, comes a fully assembled, fully functioning 747. And you say, you're right, and the intricacies of everything that exists on this earth and, throughout the universe even, they're absolutely, the hand of a creator had to be upon it. It's just as stupid to think of a fully functioning, fully assembled 747 coming out of a tornado in a junkyard as it is everything else. Everything is fitly formed in this universe, not just in
and that's my
life.
point. They may have some facts correct. There might have been an explosion. of some kind. I don't know how it works or how God creates what he does. The real issue in my mind is not pointing back to the creator, the source, and say, hey, you know what, whether an explosion was part of it or not, hey, it looks like it was. That's interesting. Note it in your interesting file. But point to the creator. And that's what I'm afraid we don't do in most of our things, whether it's we're talking about storms and destruction across the globe. No matter whatever it is, we oftentimes, societally speaking, fail to point to Almighty God. And I want to point to Almighty God in all that we do. So therefore, that's why we tie this together. I got a couple of this day in histories coming up too. Our prayers are with James Dobson's family, even though everybody, takes off at some point. It's still sad for those who are left behind. Our prayers are with the Dobson family. Hang tight, everybody.
Why don't we say to the government writ large that they have to spend a little bit less? Anybody ever had less money this year than you had last? Anybody ever having a 1% pay cut? You deal with it. That's what government needs, a 1% pay cut. If you take a 1% pay cut across the board, you have more than enough money to actually pay for the disaster relief. But nobody's going to do that because they're fiscally irresponsible. Who are they? Republicans. Who are they? Democrats. Who are they? Virtually the whole body is careless and reckless with your money. So the money will not be offset by cuts anywhere. The money will be added to the debt, and there will be a day of reckoning. What's the day of reckoning? The day of reckoning may well be the collapse of the stock market. The day of reckoning may be the collapse of the dollar. When it comes, I can't tell you exactly, but I can tell you it has happened repeatedly in history when countries ruin their currency.
Bypass the mainstream narrative with Liberty News Radio at libertynewsradio.com. Engage with charismatic hosts live or on demand. We cover the crucial news focused on God, family, and country. News that other networks simply refuse to use. Think of LNR's hard-hitting news and podcast at your fingertips, anytime, anywhere. Join us at libertynewsradio.com. Empower your day with the truth, because the truth will set you free. libertynewsradio.com.
Introducing Managed IT Services from NPI. We offer top-notch data backup and recovery, email spam protection, and network security tailored to your needs and budget. With 20-plus years of experience in the medical field, our HIPAA-certified consultants know what it takes to protect sensitive information. Don't settle for less. Give us a call at 801-706-6980 and experience the difference with Managed IT Services. Remember, your IT support should be fast, efficient, and reliable.
All right, back with you live. Dr. Scott Bradley was with me. R.I.P. to James Dobson. But on this day in history, August 25th, 1945, ladies and gentlemen, communists murdered John Birch. Thisdayofhistory.com. Dr. Bradley, do you want to talk about John Birch, who he was, give everybody kind of a little thumbnail, and then how he died?
Well, this obviously, every time you turn it over to me, you're always worried I'm going to rip the microphone out of your hands and just run with it. But that's not the case. I mean, John Birch, an incredible
Actually,
young
what
man.
I do is I toss the microphone to the doctor and let him rock and roll.
Anyway, yeah, he was a missionary, a Christian missionary in Japan. He learned Mandarin magnificently, integrated with the people. I mean, he became part of his flock, if you will. And when the Flying Tigers, the Americans, went over there to fight Japan in China, in 1942 he became an intelligence officer. And when Allied flyers got knocked down, he got them to safety. And I mean, he was very much involved in preserving American lives and so on. He was an ardent believer in God and in his country and everything. And so 10 days after Japan announced their surrender and brought the Second World War to a close, he was killed by the communists. Now, you need to understand that China was rife with challenges before World War II. Mao Zedong was trying to take over with his communist movement and its idiocy for American State Department to call him an agrarian reformer. And on the other hand was Chiang Kai-shek. And Chiang Kai-shek, while he didn't have the Americanist philosophy of, separation of powers and checks and balances, he was a warlord in China, okay? But he was an American ally and far more focused on his people not being brought under the yoke of communism. And he was fighting Mao. And Mao was a hindrance to the American efforts in World War II. Chiang Kai-shek was a valid ally that actually, I think, saved, in my opinion, he saved at least 1 million American lives by keeping the Japanese forces occupied in mainland China. But at any rate, what George Marshall did at the end of World War II, he turned all Japanese captured war material, I mean, tanks, artillery. This wasn't just a few hand grenades and a couple of rifles with a few rounds of ammunition. No, this was everything that the Japanese had in China. Marshall turned them over to Mao. And Mao began his effort to enslave mainland China. Again, we have the best enemies money can buy because we create them. So anyway, John Birch went to check out some reports of what the communists were doing, and he ended up getting murdered by the communists. And so, it's kind of, I think it's valid to say that he was probably the first American that lost his life in the Cold War. He was blatantly, unequivocally murdered by the communists. They did not want their story being told, and this stupid American was in there interfering. So a great man, John Birch is not the guy that started the John Birch Society, but Robert Welch, when he was doing some research on some things, came across this guy's name and some of his escapades, if you will, and he was pretty taken by him. And so he thought, we ought to remember his name and start an organization that's devoted to liberty. And so he named it after this young man. That it was, if it hadn't happened, he would have been
was
lost
really
to
a
history.
hero.
He had really, I don't know how many American lives he saved, and his devotion to liberty and all that kind of stuff. And he had nothing to do with the founding of John Birch Society, other than the name is commandeered, if you will, by Robert Welch when he started.
It was really his
society.
work and his hero status and what he accomplished, so that Robert Welch would say, "Hey, let's look back to the John Birch Society." It'd be like in 100 years they did the Dr. Scott Bradley Society, kind of thing. It'd be about Scott's work. But it's true that John Birch wasn't around when the John Birch Society was created. I just wanted to shout out to those heroes of American history and shame the communists for murdering such a, in my opinion, a delightful missionary focused on peace, focused on turning to God Almighty. I mean, that's what we talked about at the start of this show, and this is a guy who did that very thing. As you wisely point out, Congressman Larry McDonald died as well by the hand of the communists, and many people ask this question: accident or assassination, Doctor?
Well, I don't doubt for a moment that Congressman
he was taken
Larry
out, buddy.
McDonald, and he was on KAL 007. I mean, some of these things are lost to history. And a shoot down, I'm absolutely convinced that his plane was shot down. I believe he was.
By the way, this
alive.
is something that Donald Trump could dig into and get the goods on, right? We could double down, and this would be worth our time, baby.
You knew our friend Joe Ferguson, didn't you?
Well, of course. Well,
okay. Joe was a freedom fighter. For those that never knew Joe's name, he lived kind of in Sam's neck of the woods. He was a wide-body pilot for decades, literally. These big jumbo jets. He flew them internationally and everything. Joe did a real analysis in simulators, flight simulators. He paid his own money to go try and replicate what happened.
He's saying, "Hey, man, that did not happen like that.
It didn't happen the way that was.
It's almost
reported.
like Stephen Jones did at the University of Brigham Young University, where he basically said, "Hey, man, I'm a physicist, and the towers didn't come down like they told us they did." Both men get kind of barbecued at the stake for telling the truth, right?
Well, absolutely. And Stephen Jones and I have spoken at the same events sometimes. He probably would never remember me, but Stephen Jones brought an academic viewpoint. And then you look at what happened at the Alaska University that did an engineering and architectural analysis of the dropping of the trade towers. Not to speak of Building 7, a 47-story building that fell down with a couple of office fires in it. Didn't get hit by anything.
But it doesn't make any sense at all, people.
No,
but again, we need
but
Donald to dig into so many things. It's not even funny. I still want to know about the truth on Barack birth certificate. I'm convinced that it isn't a birther story like they say. The fact is they just forged the birth certificate. They wanted you to believe that he was from a foreign nation. I believe Barack's dad is Frank Marshall Davis, a communist leader, and they didn't want the guy trying to run for president to be tied to a communist leader that was under investigation by the FBI and everything else. So I believe Frank Marshall Davis is Barack Obama's dad. But, the problem is we just can't know, can't get to the bottom of it. And Donald promised he would, and now we're not talking about it anymore. It's very sad.
It gets set on the back bookshelf. My wife's pretty good at Photoshop. And you look at what they purport was Barack's birth certificate. It's a really clumsy Photoshop.
I worked with Joe Arpaio and some of his leaders on his posse, and we brought them into a bunch of sheriffs and showed the evidence that Joe Arpaio and those guys discovered and everything else. I mean, they literally proved with forensic experts and that it was a fraud document.
Absolutely.
And, that should not be allowed to stand, ladies and gentlemen. It just shouldn't. But for some reason, hey, Barack spies on Donald Trump and literally, I don't know what you call it, but he illegally does these things. No accountability, and we're not really going after Barack. I mean, we are, but not really. And see, I think we could go after Barack and just expose his life in terms of, I think that Barack Obama is a gay person. I think the World Net Daily and others documented that pretty dang well back in the day. But, of course, that's never really come out in mainstream. It's also never really come out about this that I'm talking about now, about the fraudulent birth certificate and everything else. I think Americans need to realize how many times false flag manipulative operations kind of affect them. And when you think about Larry McDonald, when you think about John Birch, when you think about all these things, you kind of start to build this picture that, man, I know people think things are rosy, but oftentimes they're not. I want to get to this day in history as well. August 25, 1950, Doctor. Harry Truman took drastic action. Truman seizes the railroads. Do you know about this?
Yeah, it's an FDR kind of thing. Harry Truman and FDR were cut from the same cloth. They thought, well, of course, Donald Trump did it. Donald Trump did it when he seized private assets to create stuff for the COVID con.
Yeah, he created these ventilators and everything else that no one ever ended up needing or using. There were way better solutions on the market. But this is an example where when governments think it's an emergency, they go kind of crazy. Think about seizing the railroads, though, Doctor. You look at your Communist Manifesto and transportation and the control thereof is really, that's what it takes. These line items are what it takes to make a nation communist. And he took drastic action, seized the railroads. He wanted to make sure that, hey, he remained in control. That's really what it's about. And the reason I bring it up is it's a warning today for us to kind of really think about that, right? What are we allowing to happen on our watch?
Indeed. And the problem is that we don't know enough of the Americanist philosophy to even begin to do. You look at all of the stupid things we do. You talked about Barack Obama a minute ago. Total violation of the natural born citizen thing. But so's Marco Rubio, and so now, okay, they're not running for president now, but Cruz and Rubio and those guys, they needed to be looked at very hard in the lens of the American founding fathers' original intent for a natural-born citizen. I think you'll find they didn't qualify, but nobody ever says anything. Kamala Harris didn't qualify to be vice president, let alone president, in terms of that natural-born citizen thing. We blame.
Hey, I've got my mind all made up. Quit trying to interrupt me with the facts,
Yeah.
It's that kind of deal. All right, the good doctor and yours truly back in seconds. We've got a lot to cover in a little bit of time. How's that? We'll do our very best for you right here on Liberty Roundtable Live.
How would you like to help this program reach more people and earn silver at the same time? Call or text 801-669-2211 for complete details.
Breaking news this hour from Town Hall. I'm Rich Thomason. Arrests topping 700, more than 90 firearms seized in more than a week without a single murder. These are the fruits of President Trump's crackdown on crime in Washington, D.C. And as of today, some of the 2,000-plus National Guard soldiers deployed to the streets of D.C. are armed. It's not just the capital city, the White House touting its drive to make all of America safe again.
The effort, called Summer Heat, has netted over 4,700 arrests, and more than 1,000 illegal firearms have been taken off the streets. The initiative has also led to the recovery of 270 children, many of whom were victims of human trafficking. The Trump administration's focus on supporting law enforcement and equipping them with the necessary tools is delivering results. Another example, within the last week, the FBI has apprehended one of its top 10 most wanted fugitives, marking the fourth top 10 apprehension since January. Ken Lorman reporting.
The president is considering a D.C.-style crime-fighting initiative in another big U.S. city.
Chicago's a mess. You have an incompetent mayor, grossly incompetent, and we'll straighten that one out probably next. That'll be our next one after this, and it won't even be tough.
The president also suggests sending troops to Baltimore to clean up crime in that city, and he mentions New York as well. Very hot, very dry across the West, and that is fueling wildfires. Thousands of homes are under evacuation orders and warnings because of wildfires in Northern California wine country and in Central Oregon as well. Salvadoran national Kilmar Abrego Garcia faces possible deportation to Uganda after he surrendered today to ICE officials in Baltimore. Wall Street, the Dow down 113. More on these stories at townhall.com.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm not here to do that. Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, or $500,000, we have a solution. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in your car, at work, or with your kids. No matter where you are, call now. 800-583-0141. Don't lose hope. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS.
Generous programs are now available that can give you a fresh start.
Our passion is taxes and helping individuals fix their IRS problems.
We have over 1,000 5-star reviews on Google and an A+ with the Better Business Bureau.
You don't need to be afraid of the IRS any longer. End your tax nightmare today by visiting us online at TRA.com or call
800-583-0141. That's 800-583-0141.
Tax Relief Advocates. Real solutions for real people.
Introducing PrepStartsNow.com, your ultimate guide to readiness and peace of mind. We offer practical preparedness tools, training, and education to take your family's household readiness to the next level. Browse the prep shop for essential products, check out our planning guides, and stay informed with our prep blog. Visit PrepStartsNow.com and subscribe to our emails for exclusive offers, new products, and future events. Remember, preparedness begins with PrepStartsNow.com.
Former Sheriff Richard Mack recounts in his book The Proper Role of Law Enforcement, how he came to realize while working as a beat cop how wrong the all-too-common orientation of police officers is when they think of their job as being to write tickets and arrest people. Richard Mack tells of his personal transformation from by-the-number cop to Constitution-conscious defender of citizen safety and freedoms. Learn what it really means to serve and protect. Purchase your copy at CSPOA.org. That's CSPOA.org.
Attention collectors and savvy investors. We are excited to announce a momentous evolution in our journey. Introducing Free Water Coin Company, formerly known as Rust Coin and Gift. This rebranding takes us back to the very roots of where it all began, Free Water, Oregon. It's a tribute to the legacy of Al Rust and a celebration of 3 generations of dedication to excellence in the world of coins and precious gifts. Al, Brian, and Jake Rust standing strong through 64 years of service. Discover a world of exceptional service at Free Water Coin Company, your premier destination for genuine, honest money and precious gifts. Under Brian's expert guidance, Free Water Coin Company, building on the legacy of Rust Coin and Gift, continues its tradition of trust and excellence. Visit us at our Provo, Utah location. Explore our treasures online at freewatercoinco.com or call us at 801-377-1574. Free Water Coin Company, where your future is built one honest coin at a time.
Live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty RoundTable Radio Talk Show.
All right. Happy to have you along, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Scott Bradley, freedomsrisingsun.com, and yours truly on your radio. Sadly, communists murdered John Birch, 1945. Yeah. August 25, 1950, Harry Truman takes drastic action. He literally took over the railroads, seizes the railroads. Insane. But it gets worse on August the 24th, which was yesterday, so we couldn't do a show. But listen up. 1857, the United States was jolted into one of the most severe economic crises of the 19th century, known as the Panic of 1857, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, it was a massive meltdown. See, earlier panics were not as big in scope because they weren't global in nature. But this one, because we are then getting involved more and more internationally speaking, it was a global crisis. The spark for the crisis came from the unexpected failure of the Ohio Life Insurance and Trust Company, a prominent Cincinnati-based company with offices in New York, and it was a meltdown. Dr. Bradley, you want to respond to this one? Are you aware of this one?
Well, here's you know me. History is always fascinating to me, and the issue is they've used these excuses to weave a despotism across the nation, and indeed they're doing it across the world now too, where you get the Federal Reserve ultimately and finally. During all of these periods of time, everybody uses whatever panic, whatever emergency they can find, ultimately and finally, to weave it into a despotism. And whether you're looking at the French Revolution, where they dumped grain into the Seine River, and caused, they say, oh yeah, it's poisoned, it's bad. Well, there was famine. They did the same thing in Russia when they took over there. It was man-made famine. They did it with the kulaks in the 1930s. But this particular one, with the economic problems, they kind of, what would I say? I guess what they do is they accumulate these in a gunny sack, and then they dump them on our desk finally, and they create the Federal Reserve out of things like this. Say, well, we're going to prevent these things from happening. We are going to be your saviors. And we give up our liberty for some kind of security that we propose has been presented to us. And all of these things we need to realize are just instruments in ultimately and finally destroying our liberty. So this 1857 thing, it went across the big pond, and the Europe got involved. Everybody suddenly is, ain't it awful? We got.
And the reason it was so massive is because of all the entanglements that we had financially and everything else. And so that should have been a warning shot back in 1857 that, hey, this idea that we're going to have foreign entanglements everywhere, and this idea that we're going to global finance discuss, later the Federal Reserve came into effect. But all I'm saying is if there wasn't a warning across the bow, I don't know what was, right?
Well, here's the thing, is that very often when you read polished reviews about these kinds of things, and we could go to the this opium war stuff that started about this time of the year in 1839, and it's a shining example of a modern American nation, not American, but a British, and they're kind of Americans, too. Anyway, we're tied together with them a lot, and how great it was that, it was an imperial act to get opium into China.
It was a flat-out destructionary scandal, is what it was.
But I read write-ups about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, but that's because the victors write the history.
They do. They hang the heroes and write the history, and the problem is that so much of what is written in these things in textbooks is a reworking of what actually happened. And Britain went to war against China twice in the 19th century on opium wars that they started to make sure that they could get this addictive, destructive drug into China that people would get hooked on, so that they'd spend their gold and their silver into British coffers. I mean, all of these kinds of things. I mean, I just am appalled at how, as you say, the victors write the history, and we get these glowing things. Oh, what an imperialistic thing that was so wonderful by a forward-looking nation.
No, it was
Britain?
absolutely
Really?
satanic. It violated the sovereignty of other nations. It promoted drugs, and I'm just saying it's disaster.
By
And
the way,
9 times out
FDR's
of 10,
family.
you find out that these problems that we all experience and try to recover from, government had a hand in the demise, or the hand in the, the fly in the ointment, whatever you want to say. Government always seems to be involved in this kind of stuff.
There's no question. And a thought that crossed my mind, sometimes they flit in and flit out. FDR's family got rich off that opium trade. I mean, it's like, holy Hannah. They were drug dealers. They were cartel people, for crying.
Yeah, but
and
then
he
you got
becomes
the modern
president.
day as history repeats itself. I mean, you got the history of Bill Clinton and the Clinton family involved in the Arkansas drug trade. There was a lot of documentation about that back in the day as well. And, of course, none of that's been uncovered and dealt with either.
Nope. And the fact is that we have these iconic, you kind of say, family dynasties sometimes, and really, they're among the worst of the worst. Robert
We're
Barron
going
kind of
to
stuff.
talk about if we're going to do this day in history and everything else. Then on August 24th, 1814, the White House burned. You want to talk about that one?
Well, the Brits kind of took, it's kind of like taking the king. You look at a chess game, you're going to take the king, and suddenly you're, checkmate, and things are done. And that was the move. And the Brits were taking the capital of the United States, and the White House did get torched. And, we had Madison's wife taking some of the artifacts out there. Star-Spangled Banner came out of that, "Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light?" Because he was there to get some prisoners of war away from the Brits if he could. And, by the way, I'm sorry to bring stuff up, but I just got to say this. I've heard this faith-promoting rumor told so many times about how by the end of the battle, this flagpole that was under fire from the Brits. You strike your flag when you're surrendering, and they were going to make sure the flag was up, and it was on a funny angle and everything like that. The bodies were stacked up at the bottom where they were holding this, the flagpole up. If people will go to one of those 90-foot tall power poles that somewhere runs around your town, big, heavy poles, that's the height and size of the flagpole. That was not held up by the manly strength of goodly, defenders of the fort. It's a complete fabrication, and they use these faith-promoting things just as bad as people use some of the flat-out lies about Britain being the stellar imperialist with starting
Well, that's
war
why the
against.
truth is stranger than fiction, right?
It is, but I have heard that rumor, around the time that this bombardment of Fort McHenry happened and everything like that. The number of deaths were, I don't remember, number 4 or 6 in the fort. There weren't bodies stacked around holding up the flagpole that had been shot down just so we could have the, dawn's early light and the flag still waving. I mean, people, stop believing everything you hear.
All right.
Do a little
in-
bit of
In
investigation.
1814, though, the White House absolutely got burned down by the British.
Well, it wasn't burned
And,
all the way down. It got scorched, but
It was the War of 1812 that made all that happen. And they kind of felt like, hey, this is good. This just shows the vulnerability of the United States, right?
yeah. We weren't ready for the War of 1812. I mean, it was a nip and tuck kind of thing, but we couldn't stand it anymore. The Brits were doing exactly what we're doing today in the world. There was all these trade sanctions and Mother May I, so you can commit, so you can go to trade with different people. It's kind of like what we declare, we're going to do huge tariffs against anybody that trades with Russia. These are acts of war. This had been perpetrated against the United States 1,000 times on the high seas by the British interdicting U.S. trade and saying, you can't go here, you can't use this port, we're going to go on board and see who's going with what. The United States is doing this in spades all over the world today. We do it by diplomatic attaché and all that kind of stuff. But we punish people for dealing with other people, and we prevent people from doing free trade.
And it needs to stop, and government needs to get back in its little box where it needs to be and everything else. Let's go ahead and skip the break. On August 25th, 1609, ladies and gentlemen, 1609, Galileo, the astronomer and philosopher, debuted to what they call Venetian merchants. It would make him both a legend and a heretic, by the way, but he released the telescope, Doctor. This is pretty interesting because the church went against him and everything else, and I'm just telling you, you develop a looking glass and you can see the truth on things, and it just explodes heads and government institutions and churches and every other institution that wants to propagandize and lie to the people. Once they get the truth, they don't know what to do with it, right?
Well, it broke their narrative, and it's kind of like the safe and effective vaccine. If church leaders come out and they say the wrong thing, they ought to say, "Hey, we blew it." But if the thing happens in Galileo's day, now we can point to that and say, "See, those turkeys that were running the church, they really just needed to get with the program." Galileo made an amazing. I mentioned this in the first half of the hour. I mean, this magnificent, we see things that are happening that we haven't observed before, and it's a testimony of the vastness of God's creations and the amazing clockwork, if you will, the solar system and how it stays in its place. If our planet was bumping into others, that would be pretty messy. But no, the church ended up fighting it. It was the Catholic Church, for anybody that might be wondering.
It's ridiculous, too, when you look back on it. You go, are you kidding me?
Absolutely. But, churches defend their narrative and their institutional, I don't know what they say, pride, or they keep everything scrubbed the way it looks like that they're spotless and clean and pure and everything. Truth is truth. We need to seek truth and be big enough. If truth hurts your position, it should be. If truth is really there and you have truth, it won't hurt your position. Truth will bear up truth. And so we need to be willing to accept, as we gain further light and knowledge, if you will. God reveals it all the time. If we could just accept his way instead of an institution that's trying to protect their butts.
All right, Caroline Levitt had her birthday yesterday. Did you see that, Doctor?
No, I didn't. I wasn't watching.
Yeah.
What is she,
Happy
about 28 or something
Caroline.
like that? Is she 28 or something? She's a young woman.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm telling you right now, she gives them heck. She lays it out pretty good. Now, she doesn't cover some of the ground that I'd want her to, but again, she works for the administration, so I don't know how much latitude she has. But she defends very boldly and very accurately the Trump administration in most situations. She does a pretty dang good job. It reminds me of the gal that did it before her. Oh, what was her name? Shoot,
no, it doesn't. It's a compare and contrast. I mean, the one that did it before for what's his name, Biden. How quickly?
No. I'm not talking about her. I'm talking about the one that Trump had before.
Oh,
she did a good job too. I can't remember her name right now. I'd have to look it up.
Okay.
Mike Huckabee's daughter was one of them for a while.
Oh,
she did
yeah.
a pretty good job, and then there was another one that did a good job too. I'd have to look it up. Problem is, too many names, too many places, too many people. We're talking about thousands of years of history here. We're covering people, so it's hard to remember and know everything. The good doctor does better than I because he has a photographic memory, and I can't even see a photograph. So there you go. I want to spend the rest of the hour
which
on a
ain't
weird
much,
concept.
by the way.
Huh?
It ain't much. We only got 10 minutes left.
I know, but it's enough time to cover this topic. And so let me tell you what kind of brought this to my mind. I go out of my house to get the mail oftentimes because there's checks in the mail for my business and I need to process those. And sometimes there's requests and things that need to be taken care of. And so I go out and get the mail. But over the last couple of years, whenever I go out and get the mail now, I trip over packages.
Oh, yeah.
Because the packages are at your front. The packages are at your front door, and you got to walk all the way out to the mailbox to get the mail, don't you know, Doctor? Now, the mail of the post office is a constitutional thing. I get that. But I also get the scope of this organization has morphed big time. It used to be we want to just deliver correspondence and make sure, back in the day when the correspondence wasn't stable or consistent, hey, we want to have, the correspondence is critical to running the affairs of a proper nation and all this kind of stuff. And so, I understand why it was part of the post office. I mean, the post office was part of the Constitution and all that. I get it. At the same time, I look at the situation and go, were they supposed to be delivering packages and competing with the private sector and everything else? And so when I look at this, I go out and I trip over all these packages brought to me by Amazon, Walmart, DHL, UPS, FedEx. I mean, I can keep going, right? And I think, the post office, then I get my mail, and it's just full of a bunch of junk. I mean, 99% of it I don't want or need. Problem is I got to dig through it all to get what I do want and what I do need. That's the problem with it. But at the end of the day, I kind of go, hey, the post office, although it's constitutional, loses tons of money every year. I mean, I'd have to just go look up and see how much it's lost the last year or whatever. But all I'm telling you is it loses millions, probably billions. But anyway, my thought on the post office was this, Doctor. Keep the constitutional agency. Reduce it to its scope, which is the delivery of letters and simple correspondence and nothing more. Have them deliver once a week, but let them use these other private sectors. Let them compete for the private market to deliver this last mile. I would get my mail in a little bag on my porch with my packages. I wouldn't have to go all the way out to my mailbox. The post office wouldn't have to have this, delivery. I could just take my mailbox down, don't need it anymore. And these private companies could deliver and compete for the business. You could still carry out the constitutional mandate and keep the core there, but you could save a ton of money. And then you wouldn't have this junk mail in my mailbox at special privilege, government politicians getting a special privilege. And I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. Seems like we could save the post office and the constitutionality of it, and we could bring it to these private sector organizations that would compete, and we could do so much good if we'd think about modernizing that. If DOJ wants to save money, that's a great constitutional place to start, Doctor.
It seems like there's got to be some way to kind of make things work better than they are. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 7, Congress shall have power to establish post offices and post roads. The historical perspective on this was that it was essential to tie the nation together. It was essential to be able to, deliver correspondence, communication. Jefferson had particular heartburn with how his mail, if you will, prior to the post office, was being delivered, in that he said it had always been rifled through. Everybody had read his mail, every hand it passed through as it came to his front porch, if you will, or post office box. I don't know what they did in those days. But anyway, everybody that got a chance to touch it wanted to know who was talking to Thomas Jefferson, and he always knew. He was pretty dog-eared by the time he got it, and it was like, in order for us to be a nation, we need to be able to communicate. We need to have some confidence in that.
I support that general premise, right? I mean, we agree that
right.
Needs to be.
And that's true, and that's why they established it that way. By the way, the post roads has nothing to do with starting freeway systems and interstate, all that kind of nonsense that Eisenhower used as Bravo Sierra approach to that. But at any rate, no, it's got to be a way to improve it. I would like to examine that more closely, because honestly, let's say that.
But look, you don't need correspondence more than once a week. That's plenty. And you could literally have it delivered once a week, and you could use these private companies for the last mile, and you could bring the post office down. We don't need cancer stamps and this and that, political stuff. We don't need all the packages and competing with the private sector. You just need to reduce it to its constitutional mandate, which was to make sure that correspondence got through. And if a company's not doing a good job at it, you get another one. If at some point the companies can't compete or there's no private companies that can do it, you can take it in-house again if necessary. But I think you could streamline this thing and make it to where it wasn't losing money.
Well, I think that there are definitely improvements that need to be made. I mean, and by the way, the reason they're in such a big world of hurt nowadays is because, all these other factors you're talking about, and then certainly most of the time when you and I communicate, it's via email, okay, which takes a letter away, which would have been a revenue stream and or part of their job. And so there are those kinds of things that are happening. But what happens if Amazon took over everything and they began to filter what came through I mean, they're doing a lot of that now. I mean, you look at YouTube, you look at the Facebook stuff, you look. I mean, a lot of these, media stuff that's technology based. They're part of the whole reason we got the censorship that happened. I mean, again, YouTube completely cut me off from being able to even communicate. Facebook made it so difficult to do when we were trying to deliver our message of liberty. And of course, with the COVID thing is what really cut my throat.
Yeah, and if you listen to a lot of these private companies, they say the government made them do it too. Now, whether that's true or not, time will tell. I'm just saying there's got to be a way to not just lose money hand over fist on this. The U.S. Postal Service lost money, even as recent as 2024, right?
Well, and they're getting subsidy.
It was a net loss of $9.5 billion in 2024 under general accepted accounting principles.
Yeah. Yeah, the GSA and all of the, I mean, it's a big challenge, and I don't have a really good, I don't want to trade my ability to communicate. But of course, the snail mail now most of us don't use it. And about you talk about you get checks in the mail. Well, about the only thing I get is bills and advertisements.
That's why I say it's kind of worthless. We're paying for this delivery of all this garbage we don't want, number one. Number two, if you put it in the hands of private sector, it would cost money to deliver this stuff to where it's like, hey, I don't care if it costs $1 to get a letter to somebody. If that's what it takes, that's what it takes. We just need to find a way to make it not lose money hand over fist. We applaud Congress for saving $9 billion. That's great, but you could do that with the post office. You could make it to where it wasn't losing money, that it could take care of itself. And again, you don't need to tie it up all in Amazon. You give the contracts to different companies. Maybe it's like, hey, we're going to deliver 4 times a month, and we're going to use 4 different companies in cyclical fashion to do it. There's ways to protect the system, and there's ways to not disassemble it entirely. So if it needed to recover or needed to kind of crank up its own whatever, that it could do those things. There could be stiff penalties. There already is for mail. If you don't pass the mail along. I mean, they did that with a bunch of ballots already and got caught and stuff. So we see this already happening, even with the post office in place, Doctor.
Well, that's true. Again, I'm confident that there's got to be a better way to do it. I'm just not sure without some analysis on how the best way to do that. And to drive a stake in the ground for me right now, I'd be a little uncomfortable doing that. But I think there is a better way to do it.
Here's the idea. So the headline says, Sam provides solutions and suggestions regarding how the Postal Service can reduce its consistent losses. And, exactly the nail of exactly how it should be done, I don't know. I'm just throwing out some ideas. Maybe you've got ideas. The most important thing is that we start a discussion that people put, real analysis together. I'm not ready to decide on exactly what should be done yet either. I'm just telling you that something needs to be done. We're losing $9 billion a year, Doctor, and I don't see that it's getting any better.
No, it's getting worse every year, and it's absolutely astonishing that for some reason and somehow they do these bulk rate mailing kind of things that somehow they end up, it's not helping the bottom line at all. And I get my junk mail. I get junk mail far beyond anything that I get that's of any value.
The truth shall set us free. We got to talk about these things, and I agree. I'm just tossing it into the discussion pool right now, and I at least don't want to do so without any recommendations or ideas. There's ways to reduce the size and scope of the post office. Even if we said it's not delivering packages, just delivering letters. And then we decreased how often it had to deliver would save a ton of money. That alone. So there's options, ladies and gentlemen. Remember that. Dr. Scott Bradley, freedomsrisingsun.com. Thank you so much. I am Sam Bushman. This is Liberty Roundtable Live, syndicated by the Loving Liberty Radio Networks. Spread the word, share the love, and we the people can and will save our grand old republic. God save America.